Topic is the word faith movement. And just to start with the name, the word faith movement, there have been different names, different terms applied to this movement. I find this to be the most respectable. And you'll hear like prosperity gospel, and sometimes I might slip and accidentally say that. I don't mean it to say something pejorative. I want to treat this subject with respect. There's people in the movement, in the group, that have these beliefs that I respect, and I'm not going to come up here and start trying to tear it down and be pejorative and mean-spirited about it. But I want a good, solid term, and I think word of faith, or word faith, sometimes it's called, I think is a good, respectable term for it. Kenneth Hagin, one of the main founders of it, his magazine is called The Word of Faith, and so I think this is more of a respectable term. You probably heard others like the name it and claim it, or blab and grab it. I don't want to go there. Okay, what we want to stay respectable in this class as we examine the ideas that are coming forward in this movement. Now, this isn't the first time that I've taught this subject, even in this church, for this extended period of time. There was the Sunday school class that meets on the other side of that wall in the morning service that we went through this. And going into this was a little nerve-wracking for me because I know, usually with my ministry I'm talking about Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, things like that. Normally they're not in the class when I'm teaching. Once in a while when we have like a larger seminar that's advertised on the radio, Mormons might come and all that, and that's always great because they have the opportunity to minister to them when they come. But when we approach a subject like this, oftentimes there are people in the class that have been influenced one way or another with it. And when I taught that other Sunday school class, there were some big adherents to this that weren't happy that I came. So some people were not very happy that I was showing up, but then there was other people that were really happy that I was showing up. And so then I had to find a way, how am I going to channel through this middle ground to challenge everybody to think? So I kind of felt like I was this guy here. Which side of the rope am I going to fall off? Because even some of the people that were happy that I was there, that was hoping I was going to maybe sock it to the word faith folks, I was hoping to challenge them as well to get them to see that maybe some of the reasons they're against the word faith movement are not really valid. I find that evangelicals, we're not deep thinkers. There's a lot of strengths to us as evangelicals. Our action, our ability to get out there with the gospel, to serve people. But thinking isn't really our forte, and I hope not to offend maybe all of us here that doesn't apply to, but we're not great deep thinkers. We're really reactionary. And it would be really easy for me to come up here and play on the reactionary part of it and play video clips of just some of the craziest statements that sometimes word faith teachers have made. And then I can just turn everybody against them and never say, now go out into the world and tell people how evil this is. I don't want to do that. I want to challenge us to think about, well, what is it that they're really saying? Where are they coming from with their theology? And why are they wrong? Not just let's believe they're wrong. Let's try to think about, why are they wrong? How can we respond to this? My desire is to major on the majors. We can go off on these rabbit trails that some of them say, like Benny Hinn, for example. He's an easy target because he says some really strange things at times. At one point he said that women originally were supposed to give birth out of their sides. Now, I've never heard him say that again. I don't know if he still believes that or if that was just a one-time thing he said and then he realized later he was wrong, but I've never heard any other person say that. So I'm not going to get up here and say, see, word faith people believe that women originally. No. I want to major on the majors. I want to look for the things within the movement that it seems like they're all pretty much in agreement with. That they're all teaching, things that they're all saying. And kind of boil that down to, okay, this seems to me, Tim, as the word faith movement, and try to go through those issues. Look at the verses they're using and try to figure out where they're coming from so we can better understand them. Maybe I might convince you on the other side. I hope not. One person in the other class, after we'd been going through many weeks of the class, she raised her hand and said, you know what, I'm not really sure what side I'm on now. Because things like the word faith movement influences us in ways that we don't realize. When the Mormon missionaries come and knock on your door, somebody is there trying to convert the way you think. But when you're sitting at home in the evening, you turn on the TV and you're listening to a preacher, our guards are down more, and we don't stop and think, where's this person coming from? We don't think somebody's there trying to convert us, so we adopt some of these ideas. So maybe I'll challenge all of us in different ways through the class to think about these issues. If you're one of the ones that are against the the word faith movement, I said I think a lot of folks are against it for the wrong reason sometimes. Like in the class I taught before, a few times people said, well, it's just Gnosticism. And it was like the easy way to push the whole thing out. It's Gnosticism, which I'm not going to get into what Gnosticism is, but it's not Gnosticism. And I had to go back and do some research and try to figure out where is this coming from? Why are some people saying this is Gnosticism? I don't see any strong links to this in Gnosticism. So I would stand up in class and tell them, no, I disagree. In fact, I would try to be harsher with them than I would be with the word faith people and say, no, this is not Gnosticism. And try to explain why. And it's not just on the popular level of Christians in the church having the wrong idea, but things that I read and research and look at the internet, you can see some people have taken these folks way out of context. Kenneth Copeland once said that God is the biggest loser in the Bible. Man, wouldn't it be easy to get people mad at Kenneth Copeland by taking that quote and just spraying it all over the place? Now, whoever took that quote from him and sprayed it all over the place, I don't know if that person was trying to take him out of context and knowing what he really meant or not. I don't know. But if you look at the larger of what Kenneth Copeland said, which I've never heard the whole talk that he gave that day, but from what I understand, he wasn't, in the final analysis, he says, no, God wasn't the biggest loser in the Bible. He just built it up to this point of the cross, where when Jesus then dies on the cross, then it shows, no, he's not the biggest loser. Because in the beginning, he looks like it. Man, he creates Adam and Eve, and look how bad everything goes. Through his sermon, he works through just how terrible things are falling apart. He tries to organize and try to redeem Israel, and look what happens. But in the end, God is not the biggest loser. Sounds like a powerful message. It's easy to take these folks out of context and make them look bad and stupid and heretical. And if I ever say anything that you think that I'm doing that as well, I want to know that. I want to be able to back up what I say as well. So why is Tim bothering us about this? A few of the reasons I already gave. We need to have true, good Christian fellowship with each other. If we're going to believe that these folks are Christians in the same sense that we are, then we should be able to challenge each other and talk about these issues. And also, as I go through this class, it's clear that I don't agree with this movement. So I'm not saying that there is no real issue. There is really, I think, huge issues. This crosses, I think, some major doctrinal lines, and I want to deal with them in this class. But we still, if we're going to believe people are Christians around us that believe these things, if I convince you that there are things that really shouldn't be believed, we need to be able to reach out to folks that embrace these things. But also, why would I want to bother us? Why do we want to talk about error or heresy? And there's so many weird lines, it's hard to figure out, well, where does something go? Is it just error, heresy, apostasy, or whatever? I don't know. But why do we even want to talk about that in church? Aren't we supposed to just be talking about things that edify and encourage? Well, I think there's a strong reason to say we do need to address things like this. Throughout the scriptures, in the New Testament, you'll find every single book in the New Testament, except for Philemon, gives some kind of warning about false doctrine, false teaching, false prophets, false spirits, over and over and over in the scriptures. One of them that I think is particularly interesting is right here, is Acts chapter 20. Context here in Acts 20, the Apostle Paul had been with the Ephesians for 3 years, teaching and equipping the elders to get them ready for service. And here he says, I know that after I leave, savage wolves will come in among you and will not spare the flock. Even from your own number, men will arise and distort the truth in order to draw away disciples after them. So this is one of the warning passages in scriptures about false teachers. And it's interesting how he divides this up. In verse 29, he talks about savage wolves will come in among you. And we can think of those like the people outside the doors of the Christian church that are trying to come in. Maybe the Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. They're coming in from the outside and they want to teach us their doctrine. They want to pull us out of our churches into theirs. But not only that, he says, even from your own number, men will arise and distort the truth. That to me just that just boggles my mind. Paul was teaching these guys for 3 years, and he says, even from your own number. You would think if any church is going to be solid, man, Paul taught these guys for 3 years. And he says, even from your own number, men will arise and distort the truth. So, why is this important then to do? Is because Scripture talks about this all the time. And if we're going to take the Bible seriously, this is something that we need to do, is look at the Scripture, where does this apply? And if this doesn't apply to the Word Faith movement as something that has been within, that is arising, then I don't know what else would. I think this is definitely a key example to me of something that's come up to arise and distort and draw the truth away. People from the truth. Now, some of you might feel uncomfortable at times as we're going through this class. I'm going to be showing video clips of different people, Word Faith teachers, from my research. So I want you to hear them say it, not just, well, Kenneth Copeland says. I want you to hear from them so you know that I'm not making it up. It has bigger impact this way. But some people might think, well, do we really have to name names? Can't we just talk about the ideas? First of all, I just want to look at some verses in the Scripture. 1 Timothy 1, 19 and 20 says, some have rejected and suffered shipwreck in regard to their faith. Among these are Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I had delivered over to Satan, so that they may be taught not to blaspheme. So the Apostle Paul in Scripture names names. How would you like to be poor Hymenaeus and Alexander? Not as many people are going to see what I'm teaching compared to how many people have seen what the Apostle Paul has written here. I mean, throughout history, we have good old Hymenaeus and Alexander written down here. And what does he say about him? He's delivered over to Satan. I'm not up here to say I'm delivering Kenneth Copeland over to Satan. I'm not going that far. Okay? We're just looking at what they're teaching. We're trying to examine it from what the Scriptures. And going from there, this isn't the only place. Also, 2 Timothy 2:16 and 17 says some of, but avoid worldly and empty chatter, for it will lead to further ungodliness, and their talk will spread like gangrene. Among them are Hymenaeus and Philetus. Hymenaeus gets nailed twice, and now he has a new partner here. So, I think it's okay to name names, and also, the reason why it's important to do it as well is because I really haven't done my job if all I do is come up and teach about there's these ideas that you need to look out for. For instance, if I were to be teaching on the Mormons, but I never mentioned them, and only talked about these people who believe that God used to be a man that lived on another planet, and someday you can grow and progress to become a god over your own planet as well, but I never said it was the Mormons, well, how helpful is that? You'll walk away thinking, oh, boy, that's a strange bunch of people who believe that. Then you get a knock on the door and say, oh, come on in. And you're open to hear what they have to say. You're not going to hear some of those parts of their doctrine until you've been in there for a while. And then you'll go, oh, I remember Tim teaching on that. No, we need to put a name and a face to these ideas to help us distinguish who's saying what. So we are going to name names. I have so many announcements. I'm sorry to get through all these. Each class is not going to be this way. All right. I mentioned Watchman Fellowship. We deal with Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, New Age, and all that. I'm not saying that the Word Faith movement is on that kind of a level. I'm not saying that this is a cult. Cults function differently, especially in their leadership structure, than what something like this does. I see them making the same kind of problems in their teachings that some cults do, but I'm not trying to equate the two. So if you're on Word Faith side, please know I'm not saying that you're just like a Mormon. You're not. I'm not saying some of these leaders in the Word Faith movement, I'm not saying that they're not even Christians. I don't know if they're Christians or not. I believe Christians can be deceived, and I think some leaders can be deceived as well. Might actually be Christians that are teaching something that's not true. I know I've taught things that I look back and think, man, that was just not right. That just wasn't true. So I'm not trying to judge anybody's heart. I'm not trying to put a label of cult on there. I might use a cult as an example at some point to illustrate a point, but I'm not trying to say that the Word Faith movement is cultic. And it's also not an anti-charismatic issue either. I know one fellow, when he first heard of us talking against Word Faith movement, right away thought, well, this is just one of those anti-charismatic issues. And it's not. I know two fellows who are very much, one of them is Assembly of God, the other one was Assembly of God, and he's into some independent kind of Pentecostal church now, and they're in full-time ministry, the same that I am, same kind of ministry, and they would teach against this stuff as well also. This is not anti-charismatic. So there are many charismatics who would say, man, this word faith thing has gone off too far. Now, they might be closer to it than I am, but still, these distinctives that we're going to go through are just too deep. So what is the word faith movement? They're usually known for several things. There's a focus on health, there's a focus on money, and the power of words. And it's usually these three things combined as well. Because there are folks out there that may focus on health and focus on money, but if it's not the power of words, then it usually isn't word faith. And I'm going to show you some of these folks as well, too, so we can make that distinction. Because some come very close to the word faith line, but then don't step over. And these are some of the things that I think help put us on that side. But other things in the word faith movement impact us quite a bit. So we start to get influenced by some of these ideas that come out in their focus on health and money and the words. It starts to impact other areas of our life. I mean, theology works as a whole, not just this one little idea is one thing that we have. It usually impacts a lot of others. Once we start adopting some of their ideas about what is the power of words and how does that affect money and health and all that, it starts to affect a lot of other things. Like such as this. I mean, how important is this? How do we pray? And that is, how do we connect with God? How do we thank Him? How do we request? I mean, if we get this part messed up, I mean, talk about an important aspect of our whole Christian life. We find out that we haven't even been praying the way God is hoping we would. And this will be definitely something we'll need to look into. Number two, what does it mean to have faith in God? What does it mean to have faith in God? I was talking to a woman in the Midwest recently. She's a pastor's wife and of an Assemblies of God church, and somebody brought in Joyce Meyer's teaching or something, and then is it one of these where some people got really upset on this side, like, oh, wrong. Other side was saying, what? She's wonderful, she's good, and they started having a fight, and she called me, and so we're talking about this, and she made one comment about people in the word faith movement that they have such strong faith. Well, what does it mean to have faith in God? If somebody is describing faith really differently from what the Scripture's saying, do they really have faith in God? Than to say they have a lot of faith. And just make a really weird example. Let's say that I believe faith is a folding chair, and my house is jam-packed full of folding chairs. You could say, like, wow, that guy has such great faith. And it almost sounds like we're saying the same thing. Well, no, it doesn't mean I have strong faith. It means I've got a lot of folding chairs. I don't have what the Bible talks about of having faith. So if we're saying that somebody has great faith, we need to make sure, well, what is faith? Well, what does it mean to have faith in God? Because maybe if we miss the point of that, and I'm not saying the word faith folks don't have any kind of idea of what having faith in God is, but if there is nuance there that's taking them away from God, we should know that, know how to protect ourselves from it, and know how to encourage them in what true biblical faith would be. And this becomes very important as I've done my research. This has come out a lot. What has God done for us? What is He doing for us? What did He do for us, and what is He going to do? What can we expect from Him? Because if we expect that God is going to give us all the resources and all the help that we will ever need for the rest of our lives, that really impacts the way we think about everything. And that's the mindset that we start to see from some folks, is this is what you should expect, and then becomes a noose around some folks' neck where they can't really function with the reality that they don't have all their needs met right now. And why don't they? Well, you need to keep believing. You need to keep believing that you have it. And then God will bring it, because then you have to keep believing. You can't admit. One of the saddest things that I heard from one person who is I think he's kind of part word faith, probably more word faith than not. But he used to attend a church that was just fully word faith. And he said one of the frustrations that he had was that friends that he knew would die of cancer. And he didn't know it. He never knew they had cancer. Because you can't say that you have cancer, because that'll help you keep that cancer in your body. You have to say that you don't have cancer. You don't admit it. You don't acknowledge it. So if you think, what has God done for us, and He's provided complete healing, so you can't talk sickness, well, then that's one of the things that plays out. My friend said that his people would die around him. He wouldn't even know that they were sick. They might have been sick with that cancer for a few years, and he was right next to them, and he had no idea. He didn't know how to hug them. He didn't know how to love them because they couldn't admit that. That is incredibly sad. Another big one. What is the purpose of life? Why are we here? That's another big one. What is the focus of this life supposed to be? Say from the Scriptures, our focus is supposed to be on God. We are created by Him and for Him, according to the Scriptures in Colossians. But the purpose of life, when the focus is the health and the money, like the billboard that you mentioned, it's what you can have if you go to church, of all these riches. That's not the focus. The focus is supposed to be on God as a provider. Scriptures talk about us being content with our possessions. Yeah, He's the giver of all good gifts, but we need to be content. You might say no. So these are the things that we're going to see the word faith movement is going to start to impact. I want to give probably most of the rest of the class just to go through who are some of the major players of the word faith movement. Certainly there's a lot more than what I'm just going to show you. These are some of the ones that I've researched. And I'm going to divide the word faith teachers up into two categories, old school and then new school. And I'll explain what that means as I work through this a little bit. But the first one we've got to point out would be Kenneth Hagin. Kenneth Hagin is known by many of the word faith teachers as Dad Hagin. They'll call him sometimes because it's from Kenneth Hagin that they derived a lot of their beliefs and thinking. He was very popular as a teacher and preacher. Many of them heard him, adopted his ideas, and moved forward with it. He began his ministry in 1949, and in 1963, the Kenneth E. Hagin Evangelistic Association was incorporated. And he started the Word of Faith magazine. That's the title of it, with around 600,000 subscribers today. In 1974, he founded the Rhema Bible Training Center. And he died in 2003. His son, I can't remember his middle initial, it's Kenneth Hagin also. This is Kenneth E. Hagin. His son, also Kenneth Hagin, still runs the organization, still has the Word of Faith magazine that comes out. Now, it all didn't start with Kenneth Hagin. They call him Dad Hagin or Father Hagin. Pop Hagin once I heard. But there is another guy that came before him, E.W. Kenyon. I'm not going to go that far back in history because I would just want to deal with the people who are popularizing the whole movement today. E.W. Kenyon, who knows, it might not have even started without E.W. Kenyon before Kenneth Hagin, but since he was at a time before this YouTube thing and all this other mass media and getting the information out there, people aren't really getting into the movement and adhering to it because of him. But because of folks like Kenneth Hagin and these others, we see it moving along. Kenneth and Gloria Copeland. In the 1960s, Kenneth Copeland was a pilot and chauffeur for Oral Roberts. A few months later, after this on-the-job experience of seeing how ministry works, which I'm not criticizing him for that. I mean, what a great stepping stone to get him going in ministry through Oral Roberts. Kenneth Copeland Ministries was birthed. They run the Believer's Voice of Victory program. You see it on TV 5 days a week. And you can also look them up on the internet. You can watch old programs for free just by clicking on the internet. Another guy, this is Fred Price. Fred Price, along with others, a few other people, he established the Crenshaw Christian Center, founded in 1973 in Inglewood, California. They kept outgrowing their churches. And so they kept building other buildings, and they built the Faith Dome. It took from 1986 to 1989. That's one of the largest sanctuaries in the United States, seating for nearly 10,000 people in one auditorium. Membership totals over 22,000, And he started the Inner City Word of Faith Ministries. See, we get that term again, the Word of Faith Ministries, to introduce the Word of Faith teachings to other churches. Now 400 churches are affiliated with this organization. And he has his television show, the Ever-Increasing Faith Ministries. He's been ordained as an apostle. I saw some clips on YouTube. I'm not sure what all that was about, but very revered as one of the main teachers of this. Now, somebody who's kind of a newer kid on the block, a lot of these guys we're looking at have been around a long time. Creflo Dollar, he started in 1986, so a little bit later. World Changers Church, College Park, Georgia, 30,000 members. $69 million in revenue back in 2006. I don't know any or current figures, but $69 million in 1 year coming from Creflo Dollar. 1 year for Kenneth Copeland's birthday, I understand Creflo Dollar gave him $1 million. I mean, a lot of money and a lot of wealth. And one of the most colorful characters in the Word Faith movement is Mr. Benny Hinn. He is known for his Miracle Crusades. He's got a TV program, This Is Your Day. He's the one that if we, one of the most colorful, strange statements, you can go to Benny Hinn. He's said some things over the years that are really strange. He's backed off on some. Sometimes he goes back to them, but he has his big healing crusades. People come forward to get healed and delivered from their sickness. These are some of the old school people. I'm going to be using some clips, video clips from these folks, and a few others as well, Marilyn Hickey and some others. But then there's new school Word Faith folks. The difference is old school Word Faith folks, and these are my definitions here. Old school are those that they focus on these Word Faith distinctives of health and healing and wealth and the power of words. I think almost any time you turn on a program to watch Kenneth Copeland teach and preach, he's talking about money. You listen to his wife, Gloria, she's always talking about healing. I'm not criticizing them, I'm just saying this seems to be the way they operate. The old school focus on these distinctives of the Word Faith movement. The new school, they're different. They adhere to these ideas of the power of words, the importance of money, and the place of healing in our lives, but they don't feel that they need to bring that up every time they teach. So they have different things that they focus on, but then they have that scoring of Word Faith ideas. One of them would be John Hagee. He's definitely in that Word Faith camp, but he likes to focus on Israel and prophecy and the future and our role in America as far as fulfillment of prophecy. He has a Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, 8,406 members. He has 160 TV stations broadcast him. So you might think, well, only 8,406 members, that's not a lot, but 160 TV stations broadcast his program, and it's accessible to 99 million homes. So though he may not have the kind of numbers that some of the others have right there in his own church, he's reaching this message all over the world. Another fellow here, this is Rod Parsley, is the World Harvest Church in Columbus, Ohio, 12,000 members, the 35th largest church in America. Word Faith churches have enormous amounts of people coming to them. That doesn't mean if it's a large church, it's got to be Word Faith, but they usually tend to draw a lot of people. They have very, very charismatic teachers and preachers. If I wanted to go to, I think, the most powerful preacher I've ever heard, John Hagee just can blow a room away. If you ever hear these guys, I just get goosebumps. Like, I don't agree with them, but I'm like, wow, did he say that good? It was wrong, but it was good. So you listen to some of these, they're just amazing. So they really draw in the numbers. Ron Parsley, his emphasis often is on government and helping people in world crisis. And a lot of these folks are very much into compassionate outreach, helping people in third world countries as well. So I'm not trying to demonize anybody. They do some good things in the world like that. Joyce Meyer. This probably gets more controversy for me than anyone else in the Word Faith movement. If you've ever watched Joyce Meyer, you probably liked her. She has some really good things to say. I probably have done more research with Joyce Meyer than any of the other folks for several reasons, but many times I would be listening to her and think, man, I needed that. her main thing, whereas you have people talking about government and Israel, I think her main thing is on the subject of what we would call in theology edification. How do you just get this sin attitude out of your life, pull yourself up from your bootstraps, and walk forward following God? I mean, what a wonderful, good message. So it's a good, positive thing. But still, she's got the word faith emphasis that comes up underneath it, and that's where I get myself in hot water sometimes when people see on our website something about Joyce Meyer, and all of a sudden, what are you doing saying that she's word faith? She's great. Yeah, she is great. But still, there's this other part that people need to be aware of. And we'll see that come across very strongly. 1985, she started life in the Word as a radio ministry. 1993, moved into a television show, Enjoying Everyday Life. It's still on today. In 2005, she was voted Time Magazine's In 2005, Time Magazine's 25 most influential evangelicals in America named her as number 17. So, way, way up there in her importance. Another lady, I have a few video clips from her, so I threw her in here. I wouldn't say that she's maybe a major player, but this is Paula White. She's a senior pastor of Walls Without International Church in Tampa and Lakeland, Florida. She has a TV show called Paula Today. Her emphasis, I don't really know exactly if she's always on the same kind of emphasis, but I've seen her talk about the Old Testament festivals and other things, so I don't necessarily have the strongest beat on her as the others. But this next guy needs no introduction. If you don't know who this guy is, then you've been living in a closet for a while. Joel Osteen. And often people at this point are surprised that I'm pulling some of these names up. Joel Osteen is word faith. Well, that's because they're new school. They don't think they need to talk about money and health all the time, so we're not really aware of the theology that drives underneath some of this. But yeah, he is one of the most popular preachers in the United States at this point. He's senior pastor of Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas. He has best-selling books such as Become a Better You. He's named the most influential Christian in America in 2006 by the Church Report. He has the largest congregation in the United States. This figure might be a year old or so, but has more than 43,000 people attend a week. Well, they bought, it was the Houston Rockets stadium that they purchased, and that's their church where he preaches from. Just a couple other fellows to point out to us. What about some of these other players that we've seen? Oral Roberts. I mean, he had a focus on healing. From what I understand, he wouldn't fit in the Word Faith camp, though, because though he had his healing ministry, and healing was a big thing with Oral Roberts, he didn't go into the, at least I never have seen his teaching from him, solid, credible teaching from him saying that about the power of words. And if you don't know what we mean by the power of words, we're going to get into that pretty strongly in a few weeks, but basically your words have the ability and power to change reality. That you can influence things around you just by speaking things into existence, changing the world around you. I don't know that Oral Roberts ever went that route. I've never heard of it. So he's a healer, and you'll see these guys, even pictures of them. They'll go to each other's sermons and stuff, so they're friends. They work together. But his theology, I don't think, crossed that into the word faith category. And then also Pat Robertson. Sometimes there's questions about this guy, because he'll talk about money, perhaps. Not necessarily all the time. Maybe he's a new school word faith, but from what I've seen, no. He would call it more of the law of reciprocity. When you're working for God, you're in God's will, you're doing what God wants, then God compensates and does this. Word faith folks, that's not what they're saying. Yeah, you need to be following God, but you also need to be speaking the right words and to speak things into existence, whereas Pat Robertson would not go in that direction. So just because somebody's talking about health and wealth doesn't mean that they fit into that word faith category.